After relentless pressure from my sister, my parents handed control of our family restaurant to my brother-in-law. But his disastrous management, firing our top staff, altering beloved recipes, and almost triggering a health department shutdown, forced them to call me back to clean up his mess. At 29, I desperately need to share this, as I'm completely at a loss. Our family has owned a beloved Italian restaurant for over 2 decades. My parents established it when I was just 9, and I've been involved in some form since age 16. My journey in the business began early. At 16, I spent weekends bussing tables, sweeping floors, and doing basic kitchen prep. By my senior year of high school, my hours increased, and I learned to take customer orders. Rather than attending college immediately after graduating, I committed to working full-time, supporting my parents. Over the following 8 years, I mastered every role. I began in the kitchen, learning my mother's pasta sauce recipes. I dedicated 2 years to preparing all our appetizers, salads, and desserts. Then I progressed to the main cooking station, mastering every entree. I even served tables for 6 months, understanding customer desires and managing challenging situations. My parents meticulously taught me vendor relations, inventory management, staff scheduling, and bookkeeping. 3 years ago, when our head cook departed, I managed the kitchen for 4 months until we found a replacement. 2 years ago, when our manager left, I seamlessly absorbed those responsibilities too. Last year, I was officially promoted to general manager, and my parents openly discussed my eventual takeover when they retire. The core issue stems from my sister, Riley, 32F, and her husband, Kevin, 34M. Riley's experience at the restaurant was minimal. A few reluctant weeks in high school, forced by my parents during peak summer. She loathed it, constantly griping about garlic smells and exhaustion. She pursued a marketing degree and now works at a small ad agency nearby. Kevin, on the other hand, spent roughly 2 years as our assistant manager. He capably managed schedules, handled vendors in my absence, and assisted with server recruitment. While competent in those areas, he never expressed much curiosity about the culinary aspects or our cherished family recipes. Kevin also created friction with our veteran servers by attempting procedural changes without consulting my parents or me. Roughly 6 months ago, Riley began advocating for Kevin to manage the restaurant instead of me, a topic she frequently raised during family dinners and holiday events. She argued Kevin possessed management experience and a business degree, unlike my lack of college education. She insisted it was unjust for me to lead simply because I was the son, claiming Kevin was older and more mature. Initially, my parents disregarded these remarks, fully aware of my dedication and comprehensive knowledge of the business. However, Riley persisted, calling my mother multiple times weekly to complain about my readiness for such a significant role, asserting I was too young and Kevin possessed superior leadership. The dynamic worsened when Kevin began echoing Riley's sentiments. In staff meetings, he'd propose menu or operational changes, then express frustration when I explained their impracticality. He started openly questioning my judgment before other employees, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere for everyone. Riley's critiques soon extended to every aspect of my management. She lambasted our social media presence as terrible, insisting we needed a modern image. She grumbled about our continued use of paper menus over digital alternatives. She declared our dining room outdated, requiring renovation to attract a younger clientele. Each visit to the restaurant became an opportunity for her to find fault, always concluding that Kevin possessed the solutions. The breaking point arrived 2 months ago during a family gathering at my parents' home. Riley spent an hour meticulously detailing why Kevin should manage the restaurant. She touted his fresh ideas and potential to energize the business. She then accused me of being rigid, stuck in old ways, and resistant to necessary change, claiming I was impeding the restaurant's full potential. Kevin silently nodded in agreement with her every point, then added his own conviction. He'd been contemplating this for months and believed he could boost our profits by a minimum of 20% within half a year. He outlined plans for expanding our catering division, attracting more corporate clients and introducing both a lunch buffet and cooking classes. My parents appeared visibly uncomfortable throughout the exchange, frequently glancing at me as if urging a defense. But I was too stunned to articulate much. This level of aggression from my own sister and brother-in-law was completely unforeseen. I simply sat, absorbing their dismantling of everything I had dedicated the past 8 years to building. Following that meeting, Riley intensified her campaign against my parents. She'd appear at the restaurant during quiet times, whispering to my mother about Kevin's supposed improvements. She even deposited articles on restaurant management onto my father's desk. Her ultimate suggestion, a trial period for Kevin, to demonstrate his capabilities. 3 weeks ago, my parents finally capitulated. They summoned me to the office, announcing a desire to try something new. They inquired if I would consider a 3-month sabbatical, allowing Kevin to assume the role of acting manager. They framed it as a beneficial break for me, implying Kevin's concepts might foster growth. I was utterly bewildered. 8 years of climbing every rung, mastering every recipe, cultivating vendor and customer relationships, all to step aside for someone with merely 2 years in a supportive role? I questioned their seriousness. My father affirmed their belief. It was fair to give Kevin an opportunity. I reluctantly consented, primarily out of morbid curiosity to witness the inevitable disaster. I also assumed my parents would quickly recognize their error once Kevin operated without my guidance. I agreed to a 3-month leave, with the stipulation I remain accessible for any emergencies. Kevin's trial commenced 2 weeks ago, and I've honored my promise to stay away. Yet, reports trickle in from our servers and kitchen staff who still reach out with queries or worries. Their accounts unequivocally confirm Kevin is completely out of his depth. In his inaugural week, Kevin unilaterally decided to modify our sauce recipes without consulting my mother. Deeming them too garlicky, he halved the garlic in our marinara and meat sauces. 3 customers immediately complained about altered taste, with one loyal patron even returning her pasta. Kevin then dismissed Maria, our head server of 5 years. Maria was consistently professional, skilled with challenging customers, and fluent in Spanish, greatly assisting our Latino clientele. Kevin's reason, she wasn't enthusiastic enough about his customer service improvements. He replaced her with an individual Riley recommended from her ad agency, a server completely new to the industry. Her first shift involved repeatedly asking customers to reconfirm orders due to unfamiliarity with our menu, and her second saw her spill red wine on a customer's white shirt. Kevin has also introduced nonsensical new protocols. He mandates servers upsell appetizers and desserts to every table, despite our generous portions already satisfying most patrons. He crafted a robotic, scripted greeting for servers, which feels forced and awkward. Our long-standing customers are now inquiring about the disappearance of our previously friendly, relaxed ambiance. The kitchen staff, too, struggles with Kevin's management. He constantly revises the prep schedule and attempts to modify recipes, oblivious to our established workflow. Just yesterday, a cook texted me. We ran out of breadsticks during dinner rush because Kevin altered the baking schedule. Riley, meanwhile, has become a daily fixture, acting as a consultant, notebook in hand, observing every detail. She grills servers on sales figures and customer feedback, making some staff feel perpetually scrutinized and judged. Yesterday, my parents called, requesting my help with Kevin's vendor payment problems. He'd apparently mishandled this week's food orders, leaving us critically short on several key ingredients. Sounding distressed, they asked if I could simply come in for a few hours to rectify the situation. I refused. I reminded them they had asked me to step aside for 3 months and only 2 weeks had passed. I stated Kevin needed to resolve these issues independently if he truly intended to prove his management capabilities. I also highlighted that this was precisely the type of situation I had competently managed for years before they chose to give Kevin a chance. Now Riley labels me selfish and stubborn, She claims I'm sabotaging Kevin's efforts by withholding help when the restaurant needs me, accusing me of wishing for his failure solely to reclaim my role. She insists I should prioritize supporting the family business over my pride. My parents find themselves in an awkward predicament. They seem to grasp Kevin's struggles, but are reluctant to admit their misjudgment so soon after granting him the trial. Moreover, they wish to spare Riley's feelings by not acknowledging her husband's unsuitability for managing our restaurant. I'm at a complete crossroads. One part of me yearns to let Kevin continue his failures until my parents are forced to concede their error. Yet another segment fears the lasting harm he might inflict upon our cherished family business. We've meticulously cultivated our reputation in this community for 2 decades, and I refuse to watch it crumble due to Kevin's ineptitude and Riley's misplaced aspirations. I'm also deeply resentful that my parents succumbed to Riley's demands without truly considering the impact on me. 8 years of unwavering dedication, mastering every facet of the business, only to be shunted aside based on Riley's grievances and Kevin's baseless promises of increased profits. So, what's my move? Do I maintain my distance, letting Kevin decisively prove his incompetence? Do I return and offer assistance, potentially allowing Riley and Kevin to claim credit for any positive changes? Or do I simply plan to exit the family business altogether and seek employment elsewhere? Update 1. I wanted to provide an update on the escalating restaurant crisis. Events have deteriorated far beyond my expectations, bringing forth unforeseen developments. Let me detail the remainder of Kevin's disastrous trial period. After my parents' initial plea for help with vendor payments, the situation spiraled downward even faster. By the close of his 3rd week, Kevin had sabotaged virtually every operational aspect of the restaurant. Our loyal customers began voicing more frequent complaints about food quality and service. Kevin relentlessly altered recipes and procedures, oblivious to their established rationale. He deemed our authentic pizza dough too labor-intensive, switching to a frozen substitute that rendered our pizzas tasting like cardboard. When customers complained, Kevin instructed servers to rationalize it as updating recipes for modern tastes. The financial picture grew critical during Kevin's 4th week. He haphazardly ordered supplies, disregarding budget constraints or vendor price comparisons. Food costs surged by nearly 30% as he purchased unneeded expensive ingredients, while staple items like flour and cheese vanished. He also neglected our insurance premium, resulting in a cancellation notice. Kevin's staff management culminated in a breaking point with the termination of 2 more long-term employees. Tony, our seasoned line cook of 4 years, was dismissed for merely questioning Kevin's alterations to our most popular pasta dishes' preparation methods. Kevin also fired Jessica, our dependable weekend server, for her refusal to use his mandated scripted greeting with customers. Riley, meanwhile, persisted in her daily appearances, masquerading as Kevin's business advisor. She unilaterally began reconfiguring our dining room furniture and adding new decor, bypassing my parents' approval. She also persuaded Kevin to invest in costly new menus and promotional materials, prominently featuring Kevin's photo as the restaurant manager. The crisis intensified dramatically during Kevin's 5th week when the health department issued complaints. Kevin's blatant disregard for standard food safety protocols led an inspector to discover multiple violations, including improper food storage temperatures and inadequate equipment sanitation. We received a stark warning threatening temporary closure if not rectified immediately. That very same week, Kevin made a decision that finally compelled my parents to intervene. Without a single consultation, he unilaterally booked an exorbitant catering event for a wedding reception, planned for 150 guests. The fundamental issues were twofold. Kevin promised menu items we had absolutely no experience preparing, and he quoted a price barely covering our food costs. To compound matters, he scheduled this catering on a Saturday, typically our busiest night for regular dinner service. When my parents learned of the catering catastrophe just 2 days prior to the wedding, they were frantic and called me. My father detailed the predicament, pleading for my help to salvage the event without tarnishing our reputation. I agreed, but only on the condition that Kevin's trial period be terminated immediately. I returned to the restaurant that Thursday, dedicating 12 arduous hours to orchestrating the catering job. I had to entirely reconfigure the menu, adapting it to utilize ingredients we actually possessed and could prepare with our existing equipment. I also had to enlist assistance from former employees, calling in favors to manage the overwhelming workload. The catering event, against all odds, proceeded flawlessly, yet incurred nearly $1,000 in overtime wages and ingredient waste. Following this catering crisis, my parents officially concluded Kevin's trial. They requested he revert to his former assistant manager position, a demotion Kevin vehemently rejected, claiming he wouldn't accept it after proving his capacity for greater responsibilities. Riley championed Kevin's stance, accusing my parents of insufficient time to execute his vision. Kevin and Riley departed the restaurant that day and have not returned since. Riley barraged my mother with calls for the next week, demanding an apology and insisting Kevin warranted another opportunity. When my parents stood firm, Riley retorted that they were making a grave error and would regret not endorsing Kevin's business vision. I've now been back at the restaurant for 2 weeks, diligently trying to mend the havoc Kevin wrought during his 5-week tenure. I successfully rehired Tony and Jessica, thankfully still available and eager to return. I also dedicated time to reestablishing trust with our loyal patrons, explaining the recent inconsistencies in food and service. The financial toll was substantial. Accounting for Kevin's excessive supply orders, the losses from the catering job, the expenses of restaffing, and the revenue forfeited from customers who ceased visiting, we faced over $8,000 in damages. This was a sum our family business simply couldn't absorb, particularly during our typically slower season. However, what disturbed me most was my discovery while reviewing Kevin's management paperwork. I uncovered receipts for supplies and equipment that never reached our restaurant. Inquiries to our vendors revealed Kevin had rerouted deliveries to an alternate address. It became horrifyingly clear Kevin had leveraged our restaurant's vendor accounts to procure equipment and supplies for his own nascent catering venture. He was actively planning a rival restaurant, funding its inception with our capital. The delivery address was a commercial kitchen Kevin had been leasing across town. When presented with this undeniable evidence, my parents were aghast. My father confronted Kevin, who brazenly claimed it was a misunderstanding, asserting he was merely temporarily storing some equipment elsewhere, intending to return it all. The following day, Riley screamed at my mother over the phone, alleging we were unfairly targeting Kevin. She insisted Kevin was merely exploring expansion opportunities to aid the family business, accusing us of paranoia and jealousy over his success. My parents have since repeatedly tried to recover the stolen equipment and supplies, but Kevin continuously evades their calls. Riley then sent a text, stating Kevin would return everything only once we apologized for our mistreatment and credited him for his contributions. This entire ordeal crystallized a harsh truth. Riley and Kevin never genuinely cared about our family business. They viewed our restaurant solely as a launchpad for their personal ambitions, willing to jeopardize 2 decades of my parents' hard work to achieve their aims. I'm still striving to restore our restaurant to full operation. Most loyal customers have returned, and our staff expresses relief at the consistent management. However, the trust within my family has been fractured in ways that may prove irreparable. Riley hasn't spoken to me since my return. She occasionally calls our parents to rationalize Kevin's actions, yet steadfastly refuses to acknowledge the financial devastation they inflicted or apologize for endorsing his scheme to exploit our business for his own gain. I'm now wrestling with how to proceed with Riley and Kevin. A part of me wishes to simply concentrate on rebuilding the restaurant and overlook their betrayal. But another part believes they must face repercussions for embezzling from our family business and deceitfully masking their intentions. Update 2. The saga with Riley and Kevin has taken yet another unforeseen twist. I'd assumed the worst was behind us after uncovering Kevin's scheme to pilfer supplies for his own venture, but complications have mounted. Approximately 3 weeks after my last post, Kevin finally returned most of the equipment and supplies he'd absconded with. He dropped everything off in our storage room one Tuesday afternoon, knowing I wouldn't be present, offering no explanation. Several items were missing and some equipment was damaged, yet my parents chose not to pursue the matter further, eager to avert more family strife. Riley, for her part, had entirely cut off contact with our family since the theft revelation. She ceased calling my parents and notably skipped my mother's birthday dinner, deeply hurting my mom. When my parents attempted to reach her, she either ignored their calls or hung up instantly upon recognizing their voices. Then, Riley began, reappearing at the restaurant not to assist or apologize, but to actively undermine us with our patrons. The first incident occurred on a bustling Friday night. Riley arrived with 3 friends, demanding a table despite our full reservation book. When our hostess explained a wait of about an hour, Riley grew loud and boorish, loudly lamenting how the restaurant had declined and how service was superior under Kevin's management. Her remarks were audible to other diners as she openly questioned our family's competence. She eventually left without eating, but not before creating an awkward scene that disturbed other customers' meals. This pattern persisted for weeks. Riley would materialize during our busiest hours, manufacturing complaints about everything from dining room temperature to service speed. She'd disparage our food and tell other customers about better restaurants nearby. She even resorted to posting scathing negative reviews on our social media pages using fabricated accounts. The situation escalated further when Riley directly contacted our regular clientele. She obtained phone numbers from old reservation lists, calling people to recount supposed problems she'd witnessed. She falsely informed Mrs. Rodriguez, a decade-long loyal customer, that she'd seen mice in our kitchen. She told Mr. Thompson our health department violations were more severe than we admitted. These calls were entirely baseless, yet they prompted several customers to cancel reservations or stop visiting. Mrs. Rodriguez tearfully called my mother, heartbroken at the thought of our restaurant having health issues after 10 years of patronage. It took my mother an hour to convince her that Riley's assertions were pure fabrication. My realization of Riley's deliberate sabotage intensified when a vendor informed me someone was complaining about our payment history. Riley had been contacting our suppliers, falsely claiming our restaurant faced financial ruin and might default on bills. This jeopardized our long-standing credit relationships. My parents finally decided to act when Riley's sabotage began impacting our employees. Riley telephoned Jessica, the server we'd rehired after Kevin fired her, warning her the restaurant was failing and she should immediately seek new employment. Riley asserted we'd likely close within months, leaving Jessica jobless. Jessica arrived at work the next day visibly upset and confused, questioning if the restaurant was indeed in trouble and if her job security was at risk. I had to reassure her Riley was fabricating lies and we had no intentions of closing. Yet Riley's direct targeting of our staff underscored the lengths she'd go to harm us. I decided to confront Riley personally. I called her, proposing a coffee meeting to discuss the situation. Riley agreed, likely assuming she could persuade me that Kevin deserved another managerial opportunity. At our meeting, I presented compelling evidence, copies of vendor receipts proving Kevin's theft of supplies, documentation of his financial mismanagement during his trial, and screenshots of Riley's fake social media accounts used for negative reviews. Riley examined the evidence but adamantly refused to admit any wrongdoing by herself or Kevin. She dismissed Kevin's actions as entrepreneurial and the supply theft as no big deal because he was family. She maintained her negative reviews were honest opinions of observed problems and claimed she was merely helping our regular customers make informed decisions. I explained her actions were harming our family business and the employees who relied on it. I demanded she cease interfering with our operations and apologize to our parents for the distress she'd caused. Riley outright refused to apologize. Instead, she accused me of being controlling and vindictive, claiming I used legal threats to prevent her from protecting her family's interests. She insisted I feared an objective evaluation because I knew Kevin was more qualified to run the restaurant than I. The conversation concluded with Riley storming out of the coffee shop, vowing she wouldn't stop fighting for what she believed was right, adding that Kevin possessed real vision for the restaurant industry and our family was too old-fashioned to recognize his potential. 2 days later, Riley and Kevin escalated their campaign to an alarming new level. They approached the local business journal, providing an interview where they falsely claimed our family restaurant discriminated against innovative employees. The article quoted Kevin asserting he'd been fired for suggesting modernizing improvements that challenged traditional management. Conveniently, it omitted any mention of Kevin's theft of supplies or the financial devastation he'd caused. Instead, it painted him as a visionary manager ousted by a change-resistant family. Riley was cited, declaring our restaurant exemplified everything wrong with family businesses that prioritize personal ties over professional competence. This newspaper article was the absolute final straw for my parents. They'd harbored hope Riley would eventually calm down and apologize, but seeing their family discord publicly aired was utterly unacceptable. My father called Riley, telling her she was no longer welcome at the restaurant and demanding she cease attempts to damage our business. Riley retaliated by threatening a defamation lawsuit. She alleged we'd been spreading falsehoods about Kevin's managerial capabilities, claiming his industry reputation was severely harmed by our accusations. She demanded a public apology and compensation for Kevin's lost business prospects. We promptly consulted with a lawyer who meticulously reviewed all our evidence regarding Kevin's theft and Riley's sabotage. Our lawyer affirmed Riley's threats were baseless and, in fact, we had strong grounds to pursue legal action against her for harassment and intentional interference with our business relations. My parents opted not to file a lawsuit, wishing to avoid further exacerbating the family conflict. However, they did authorize our lawyer to dispatch a cease and desist letter to Riley and Kevin, demanding they stop contacting our customers, employees, and vendors. The letter also explicitly warned that all legal remedies would be pursued if their harassment persisted. Riley received the cease and desist letter last week. She called my mother, sobbing, claiming we were attempting to destroy her family. She stated Kevin had relied on the restaurant management role to advance his career, and now his reputation was shattered by our allegations. She pleaded with my mother to withdraw the legal threats and grant Kevin another chance to prove himself. My mother firmly told Riley the decision was irreversible and Kevin would never again be permitted to work at our restaurant. She also stated their relationship could only be mended if Riley ceased trying to harm our business and apologized for the damage she had already inflicted. Riley then hung up and has not contacted any of us since. Kevin sent a single text to my father, vaguely mentioning he was contemplating his own legal action against us, but that threat has yielded nothing thus far. The restaurant is now performing significantly better, free from Riley and Kevin's interference. Our loyal customer base has returned, and we've successfully recruited dependable staff to replace those Kevin dismissed. The financial repercussions from Kevin's trial were substantial, yet we are steadily recouping our losses. Nevertheless, the damage inflicted upon our family relationships may be irreversible. My parents are utterly devastated that Riley chose to endorse Kevin's deception and sabotage rather than acknowledge her own misjudgment. They feel they have lost a daughter, and I doubt those profound wounds will ever fully mend. Update 3. I'm providing this final update due to numerous inquiries about Riley and Kevin, and because recent events have, I believe, brought this entire ordeal to a definitive close. For approximately a month after the cease and desist letter, Riley and Kevin maintained their distance from our restaurant and ceased their harassment. I'd optimistically thought they'd finally recognized their destructive behavior and moved on. Our business was steadily recovering, and my parents seemed to be coming to terms with the probable end of their relationship with Riley. However, 3 weeks ago, Riley arrived at the restaurant during our lunch rush, accompanied by an unfamiliar man. She marched directly into my parents' office, ignoring our staff, and demanded a private meeting. The man introduced himself as a business consultant specializing in restaurant management. Riley then declared that she and Kevin had decided on one last attempt to resolve our family conflict. She announced they'd hired this consultant to conduct an independent evaluation of our restaurant's operations and management structure. She asserted that if the consultant affirmed Kevin's ideas held merit, then our parents should reconsider their ban. My parents were so taken aback by Riley's sheer audacity that they didn't immediately refuse. The consultant began posing detailed questions about our revenue, profit margins, staff turnover, and customer satisfaction. He requested access to our financial records and intended to interview employees about management effectiveness. I wasn't present as I was meeting with suppliers, but our head server called me instantly. Arriving 30 minutes later, I found Riley and her consultant in our office, meticulously taking notes as my parents answered questions about our business. I demanded to know what Riley thought she was doing. She replied she was seeking an objective resolution to our dispute over Kevin's qualifications. She claimed the consultant would provide an unbiased assessment of whether Kevin's management approach could benefit our restaurant, presenting this as her final effort to prove our family had been unfair to him. I firmly told Riley we had no interest in any evaluation and ordered her and the consultant to leave immediately. Riley defiantly refused, asserting her right to be concerned about a business that would eventually form part of her inheritance. She claimed that as a family member, she deserved input into major managerial decisions. The consultant supported Riley, stating he'd already identified several operational inefficiencies improvable with proper management. He suggested Kevin's past struggles stemmed from inadequate training rather than incompetence, and that Kevin merited another chance with better preparation. At this juncture, I finally grasped that Riley would never accept she was wrong about Kevin. No amount of evidence, his theft, lies, or utter incompetence, would sway her. She was so deeply invested in proving Kevin's suitability to run our restaurant that she'd even hire external consultants to buttress her position. I called our lawyer from the restaurant, explaining the unfolding situation. The lawyer spoke to Riley by phone, reminding her the cease and desist letter prohibited interference with our business operations. The lawyer also informed the consultant he was unauthorized to access our confidential information and that his presence constituted trespassing. Riley became incandescent with rage at the lawyer's involvement. She accused me of paranoia and being controlling, claiming I used legal threats to prevent her from protecting her family's interests. She insisted I feared an objective evaluation because I knew Kevin was more qualified to run the restaurant than I. The consultant gathered his notes and exited after the lawyer threatened to involve the police. Riley followed him out, but not before telling my parents they were making the biggest mistake of their lives by choosing me over Kevin. She prophesied they'd regret ignoring her advice when the restaurant inevitably failed under my leadership. My parents were profoundly shaken by this incident. My mother wept after Riley departed, and my father confessed he never imagined his daughter would go to such extremes to undermine our family enterprise. They finally grasped that Riley's support for Kevin wasn't merely loyalty, but a genuine conviction that I was unqualified to manage the restaurant, despite my 8 years of successful stewardship. 2 days later, a $200 bill arrived from Riley's business consultant, claiming we had requested his services for a comprehensive restaurant evaluation and owed payment. Our lawyer promptly contacted the consultant, informing him no one had authorized his services and we would not pay his fee. The consultant then called Riley, demanding payment. She apparently told him our family should cover the cost, as the evaluation was intended for our business's benefit. When the consultant threatened legal action against Riley for non-payment, she called my father, urging him to pay the bill to prevent further complications. My father refused to pay for a consultant Riley had unilaterally hired. He told Riley she was solely responsible for any costs incurred from her continued interference. Riley retorted that our parents were prioritizing money over family and would lose both their daughter and their business due to their stubbornness. That was Riley's final conversation with our parents. She hasn't called or visited since, nor did she attend our father's birthday last week, despite my mother's specific invitation. My parents sent Riley a birthday card last month, which she neither acknowledged nor responded to. Kevin has also vanished from our lives completely. According to Riley, before they stopped speaking, he secured a position at a chain restaurant in the next county. She relayed to my aunt that Kevin was significantly happier working for those who appreciated his talents and vision for restaurant management. The financial repercussions of this entire situation have been substantial but manageable. Between Kevin's theft, the lost business during his trial, legal fees, and the costs of rehiring and retraining staff, our family likely incurred around $15,000 in losses. We've been working extended hours and implementing stringent cost-cutting measures to offset these deficits. Crucially, our restaurant's reputation has fully recovered. Our regular customers are content with the consistent food quality and service, and we're once again receiving glowing reviews. Several patrons have specifically noted their delight at seeing familiar staff and the renewed, welcoming atmosphere. My parents are now discussing making me the official owner of the restaurant within the next year. Their aim is to prevent any future scenarios where external family members attempt to seize control and to safeguard the business from potential inheritance disputes. I harbor mixed emotions about Riley severing contact. A part of me feels relief that she can no longer disrupt our operations or instigate drama at family gatherings. Yet I also feel profound sadness that my sister chose to end our relationship rather than admit her error about Kevin. My parents are heartbroken over losing Riley, but have accepted her decision to prioritize Kevin's lies and sabotage over her own family's welfare. They hope that someday Riley will realize what she sacrificed and attempt to mend their relationship, but they are not holding their breath. As for me, I am dedicated to continuing to build our family restaurant into something my parents can be immensely proud of. This arduous period has taught me invaluable lessons about business management, family dynamics, and asserting what is right. I am confident our restaurant will flourish without Riley and Kevin's interference. The entire experience has shown me that sometimes family members will choose to support outsiders over their own relatives, even when evidence clearly indicates their mistake. It has also revealed that some individuals will never concede they were wrong, regardless of the damage their obstinacy inflicts upon those they claim to love. Story 2. My husband's supposed work project concealed an affair with his engaged boss. When her fiancé contacted me, the entire truth unraveled, shattering my world. I never imagined divulging such raw personal details to strangers online, but life has a peculiar way of blindsiding you. I'm Sarah, 29, and I've been married to Jake, 32, for 3 years. We first met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. I recall it vividly. I arrived late, flustered and apologizing after my car refused to start, quite literally colliding with Jake. He steadied me with his hands, quipping about my dramatic entrance. We spent the remainder of the evening engrossed in conversation and laughter. Jake and I hailed from disparate backgrounds. I was the youngest of 4, raised in a small town where my parents owned a local diner. My childhood imbued me with the values of hard work and family. Jake, conversely, was a quintessential city dweller. An only child, his mother raised him, after his father's early departure. He immersed himself in computers and coding, a coping mechanism for his father's absence. Despite our contrasting upbringings, we connected instantly. A week later, we were dating, and our relationship progressed rapidly. Within 6 months, we shared a cramped, noisy downtown studio apartment, yet we were blissfully content. We'd stay up late, discussing our aspirations. My dream of launching a graphic design company. His ambition to develop the next big app. A year into our relationship, Jake proposed. It was neither grand nor elaborate, simply us on a hike, our cherished, shared activity. Reaching the trail's summit, as I caught my breath admiring the vista, I turned to find Jake kneeling. The ring was modest, a small diamond on a silver band. He later confessed he'd saved for months to buy it. Our wedding, held at a rustic barn near my hometown, was beautiful, attended by all our friends and family. I'll forever remember Jake's expression as I walked the aisle, and my dad's teary eyes giving me away. We penned our own vows, pledging unwavering honesty and unity through life's trials. The initial 2 years of our marriage were wonderful. We both worked remotely. I as a freelance graphic designer, Jake as a software engineer for a tech startup. Our routine included backyard lunch dates, evening strolls with our rescue dog Max, and weekend explorations of new hiking trails or restaurants. We were diligently saving for a significant European trip, envisioning visits to all the art museums I'd always dreamed of. Disagreements, naturally, arose. Jake tended to be a workaholic, losing track of time when immersed in projects. I, conversely, could fixate on minor details, nitpicking inconsequential matters. Yet, we invariably resolved our issues, typically over a home-cooked meal and a bottle of wine. But then, roughly 3 months ago, an unsettling shift occurred. Jake's behavior changed subtly at first. He started working increasingly longer hours, often late into the night. When I inquired, he'd attribute it to a big project. Initially, I dismissed it. His job could be demanding, and I knew he sought a promotion. However, other changes soon emerged. He grew fiercely protective of his phone, consistently placing it face down and carrying it everywhere, even to the bathroom. His outings became more frequent, claiming meetings with colleagues for drinks or work events, sometimes 3 or 4 times weekly. My attempts to discuss it were met with dismissal. He called me paranoid. Yet, my intuition screamed something was wrong. I began to retract, burying myself in my own work to escape the widening chasm between us. Last week, I took a step I never believed I would. While Jake was showering, I checked his phone. We'd always operated on an open phone policy, with no secrets between us. But his recent furtiveness left me feeling I had no other option. What I uncovered shook me to my absolute core. Dozens of intimate, flirty messages between Jake and a contact, saved simply as A, exchanges about meeting up and longing for each other. There were even a few exchanged photos, thankfully nothing explicit. I struggled to breathe, my hands trembling as I scrolled, each message a fresh stab to my heart. Hearing the shower cease, I quickly replaced the phone, my mind reeling. I confronted Jake immediately after he emerged. He initially attempted denial, but upon my revelation of having seen the messages, he broke down. He confessed A was Amy, 28, a new work colleague. They'd been engaged in an emotional affair for the past 2 months. Jake swore nothing physical had occurred and expressed a desperate desire to salvage our marriage, promising to sever all contact with Amy and even seek a new job. But I'm uncertain I can ever trust him again. The Jake I believed I knew would never have done this. Currently, I'm staying with my sister Lily, 31, needing crucial space to process. Jake incessantly calls and texts, pleading for another opportunity. My friends are divided. Some advise forgiveness, others counsel leaving. I'm utterly torn. On one hand, I deeply love Jake and the life we've meticulously constructed. Our home, our dog Max, and our discussions about starting a family soon. On the other, how can I ever truly trust him again? Will every phone notification trigger suspicion? My mind constantly drifts to the pristine early days of our relationship, our profound happiness, the hours spent discussing dreams, fears, and future aspirations. Jake always seemed so transparent and honest, or so I believed. Now, I question everything. My parents, married for 35 years, advocate for couples counseling, assuring me every marriage endures rough patches. But is infidelity merely a rough patch? I'm profoundly unconvinced. I'm also furious with Amy. How could she knowingly involve herself with a married man? I located her on social media, tempted to message her, but Lily wisely dissuaded me, arguing it would only complicate matters. I haven't eaten properly in days. Sleep evades me. Each time I close my eyes, those messages flash. I'm haunted by the thought of undisclosed details. Did they meet? Did they kiss? Did it progress? Further, Jake and I had concrete plans, saving for our Europe trip next year, discussing children within the next few years. Now, all those aspirations feel like they're dissolving around me. I'm paralyzed. A part of me wishes to forgive him and move past this. But another part feels this betrayal is insurmountable. How can I ever perceive him the same way? I desperately need advice. Has anyone navigated a similar situation? How did you manage? Is rebuilding trust possible after such a breach? Or is it wiser to walk away now, before children or deeper financial ties bind us further? Thank you for enduring this lengthy confession. I simply needed to articulate it all. Update 1. 2 weeks have passed since my last entry, and much has transpired. Your advice and support have been invaluable, providing much-needed perspective. After a week at my sister's, I decided to return home for a crucial conversation with Jake. I needed answers before making any decisions about our future. Lily, my sister, was apprehensive about my return, but I assured her I'd call if necessary. Upon arriving home, the house was in disarray, takeout containers everywhere, laundry neglected. Jake himself was a mess, looking as though he hadn't slept or shaved in days. The moment I walked in, he broke down, profusely apologizing. We sat at our kitchen table, a space of countless shared meals and conversations, and I demanded the absolute truth. No more lies or partial admissions. Over the ensuing hours, Jake recounted everything. The emotional affair, it turned out, had lasted longer than he initially confessed, spanning nearly 4 months. He and Amy had met at a work conference in San Diego. Jake was representing his company while Amy attended from a partner firm. They were seated together during a keynote speech and immediately connected. Initially, it was innocent, friendly chats and lunch meetups. They discovered numerous commonalities. Both only children, shared a love for obscure indie bands, and enjoyed rock climbing. Jake claimed he relished talking to someone who understood his job pressures. However, it gradually deepened. They began texting constantly, exchanging inside jokes and lamenting their workdays. Jake admitted he started anticipating her messages, feeling a thrill with every phone buzz. Jake swore nothing physical occurred beyond a single kiss. According to him, it happened after a late night at the office, working on a joint project. After everyone else left, they found themselves alone, and one thing led to another. They kissed. Jake insisted that's when he realized the extent of their involvement. He claimed he tried to end it then, but Amy was relentless, and he was weak. I pressed him. Why? Why risk our marriage for this? He cited feeling neglected. Apparently, my recent intense focus on a major new client project, with its long hours and tight deadlines, had made him feel we were drifting apart. Jake said he missed our former easy companionship. Instead of communicating this to me, he sought comfort elsewhere. I was incandescent with rage. Yes, my work had been demanding, but that offered no justification for infidelity. I told him he should have expressed his feelings of neglect to me. We could have addressed it together, perhaps. Planned a weekend getaway or dedicated specific time just for us. Instead, he chose to betray my trust. After our conversation, I needed time to process everything. I took a long walk in the park where we once enjoyed picnics, sitting on our favorite bench, watching families play frisbee and couples stroll. Hand in hand, I realized I wasn't yet ready to abandon our marriage. We'd built a life together, and I couldn't discard it without a genuine attempt at repair. However, I also knew things couldn't simply revert to how they were. Trust, once shattered, isn't easily mended. I spent hours contemplating what I required to feel secure in our relationship again. Returning home, I informed Jake I was willing to try and work things out, but with non-negotiable conditions. He had to find a new job immediately. I couldn't endure the thought of him working with Amy daily. He must grant me full access to his phone and computer with no more secrets. We would commence couples counseling, and he had to sever all contact with Amy, effective immediately. Jake accepted all my terms without hesitation, even demonstrating as he blocked Amy's number and deleted her from all his social media accounts. It was a beginning, yet I understood the arduous journey ahead. The next day, Jake started his job hunt, securing an interview by week's end. We also booked our inaugural couples counseling session for the following Tuesday. It's been an emotional roller coaster. Some days I feel hopeful we can navigate this. Other days, the anger and hurt are overwhelming. I find myself scrutinizing Jake's every action, questioning his veracity, which is utterly draining. We've resumed having dinner together nightly, reminiscent of our early relationship days. We discuss our days, our feelings, our fears. It's not always simple. Sometimes conversations veer towards the affair, becoming tense, but we persist. I've also recommitted to focusing on myself. I've revived my old painting hobby, something I'd neglected in recent years. It's therapeutic, allowing me to channel emotions onto canvas when words fail. My friends and family have been immensely supportive. Lily checks in daily, and my best friend Emma, 30, is a steadfast pillar of strength. Jake's mother, Linda, 58, even called to apologize for her son's actions and offer her support, whatever my decision. I know the path ahead will be challenging. Rebuilding trust demands time, and there's no guarantee of success. But for now, I'm willing to try. We've invested 5 years into this relationship, and I want to know I exhausted every effort before walking away. I'll keep you updated on our progress. Thank you again for all your support. It means more than you know. Update 2. A month has passed since my last update, and events have taken an utterly unforeseen trajectory. Jake secured a new job within 2 weeks of commencing his search, a lateral move in position, which he accepted without hesitation. He's maintained transparency with his phone and computer, often leaving them unlocked around me. We've attended 4 challenging yet beneficial couples counseling sessions. Our therapist, Dr. Martinez, has skillfully navigated us through difficult discussions about our communication, relationship expectations, and the arduous process of rebuilding trust. Jake has actively participated, articulating his feelings, and genuinely listening to mine. It's been tough, but I sensed we were progressing. Things appeared to be slowly mending. Our communication improved, and I began to entertain the possibility of overcoming this. We even started planning a weekend escape to the beach house where we honeymooned, hoping to reconnect and forge new, positive memories. But then, an event occurred that completely upended everything. Last week, I received a Facebook message request from someone named David, 30. My heart nearly stopped upon opening it. David introduced himself as Amy's fiancé. He had uncovered Amy's affair with Jake and wished to know if I was aware of the situation. I was utterly stunned. Jake had explicitly told me Amy was single. I immediately telephoned Jake at work, instructing him to come home. Upon his arrival, I showed him the message. Jake paled, stammering an attempt at explanation. It quickly became clear Jake had lied about several critical details. Amy wasn't merely a colleague, she was his team lead, and she was emphatically not single. Jake claimed initial ignorance of her engagement, but admitted learning of it about a month into their affair. He then asserted he attempted to end it, but Amy threatened professional repercussions if he did. I was incandescent with rage. Not only had Jake cheated, but he'd maintained his deception even after promising complete honesty. I felt like an utter fool for believing him, for thinking we could possibly mend things. All the progress we'd painstakingly made in therapy felt instantly nullified. I responded to David, confirming my knowledge of the affair and offering sincere apologies for the pain he was enduring. We spoke on the phone for over an hour, exchanging information and filling in each other's blanks. David revealed he and Amy had been together for 5 years, engaged 6 months prior, and deep in wedding planning. He discovered the affair by overhearing Amy on a phone call with Jake, speaking in an unmistakably intimate manner. Amy, David explained, confessed when confronted but downplayed her involvement, claiming Jake had aggressively pursued her and she'd only yielded in a moment of weakness. This narrative starkly contradicted Jake's version. Following my call with David, I confronted Jake again. This time, faced with the irrefutable evidence of my conversation with David, Jake finally divulged the complete truth. The affair had been physical from the outset. They had slept together multiple times, in hotels and even in our own home when I was visiting my parents. I was utterly devastated. Each new revelation felt like a fresh, searing betrayal. The man I thought I knew, the husband I'd married and planned a future with, was now a complete stranger. I replayed all the instances he'd lied to my face, all the times he'd been with her while I remained blissfully ignorant. I packed a bag and returned to my sister's place. I informed Jake I needed time and space to decide my next steps. He begged me to stay, to grant him another chance, but I couldn't even bear to look at him. I'm now staying with Lily indefinitely. She's been incredibly supportive, offering her shoulder for my tears and helping me weigh my options. I've contacted a lawyer to discuss my legal avenues. I'm unsure if I'll file for divorce immediately, but I want to be prepared. I feel lost, violated, and my envisioned future has crumbled around me. But I'm also fiercely angry at Jake for his betrayal, at Amy for her complicity, and at myself for being so utterly blind. I don't know what the future holds, but I absolutely know I deserve better than this. Thank you all for your ongoing support. I'll provide another update once I've determined my next course of action. Update 3. 2 months have passed since my last update, and I've made monumental decisions. After thorough deliberation and numerous discussions with my lawyer, I've decided to file for divorce. The trust between Jake and me is irreconcilably shattered, and I realized I couldn't endure a lifetime of questioning his honesty. The process has been challenging. Jake initially contested the divorce, pleading for another opportunity. He appeared unannounced at my sister's home one evening, causing a considerable scene. Lily's husband, Mark, had to threaten calling the police before Jake would depart. Witnessing him like that was agonizing, but it solidified my resolve. I could no longer bear responsibility for Jake's emotional state. Following a stern conversation with his own lawyer, Jake finally accepted the end of our marriage. We are now in the midst of dividing our assets. It feels bizarre, reducing 5 years of marriage to a mere inventory of items and bank accounts. We're selling the house. Neither of us desires to reside there, given the multitude of memories it holds. Deciding Max's fate, our dog, was the most difficult. Ultimately, we agreed on joint custody. It's not ideal, but I couldn't fathom never seeing him again. I've moved out of our house and found a small apartment of my own in a different city area, conveniently near a park for Max's walks. Starting anew has been tough, yet simultaneously liberating. I'm rediscovering my identity beyond my relationship with Jake. I've been redecorating the apartment, infusing it with vibrant colors and art, elements that are uniquely me. Professionally, I've immersed myself in work. My boss has been incredibly understanding and has even offered me a promotion to manage my own team of designers. I'm seriously considering it. It represents a fresh challenge and an opportunity for professional advancement. I've also been attending individual therapy, which has proven immensely helpful. My therapist, Dr. Patel, is guiding me through my feelings of betrayal and anger. It's helped me realize that while Jake's actions were inexcusable, our marriage did have underlying issues to which we both contributed. I'm committed to self-improvement, learning to establish healthier boundaries, and communicate more effectively. I've maintained some contact with David, Amy's former fiancé. He chose to end their engagement and, last I heard, is also undergoing therapy to cope with the betrayal. We've forged an unexpected friendship, bonding over our shared experience, and it's been comforting to speak with someone who truly understands my ordeal. As for Amy, I've heard through the grapevine she was dismissed from her job due to the unprofessional relationship with a subordinate. I'm ambivalent about this news. Part of me feels a sense of justice, but mostly I just feel sadness for all involved. Jake has made several attempts at reconciliation, sending flowers and heartfelt letters. The most recent arrived just yesterday, a lengthy, handwritten note profusely apologizing and pleading for one final chance. While a small part of me misses the life we once shared, I know I've made the correct decision in moving forward. I deserve a partner who is honest and faithful. Looking ahead, I am cautiously optimistic about my future. This experience, though painful, has taught me profound lessons about myself and what I truly desire in a relationship. I'm not yet ready to date, but I'm open to the possibility of finding love again someday. For now, my focus is on healing and rebuilding my life. I'm planning a solo trip to Europe, the very trip Jake and I were meant to take together. It feels like a symbolic act of reclaiming my independence. I'm eager to explore the art museums I've always dreamed of seeing, to wander the streets of Paris and Rome and to rediscover myself.